back and fully functional as far as anybody can tell on the outside. Is it as easy as you're making it look right now after coming back after the leukemia?
I guess so. I mean, doctors gave me a great report a few months ago and told me that I could resume all my normal activities. You know, I've just had a few little bumps in the road, but they were either medicine related or diet related, and so I've had to learn the hard way about some things, about what I can eat and what I cannot. But other than that, I feel very blessed and very humbled by the way I've been healed, because not a lot of people can recover this well. Sure. after what I've been through, and so I feel very fortunate and very blessed that I'm where I'm at as far as my health goes. I mean, I know several transplant patients who had their transplant around the same time I did that haven't even been able to go back to work yet, or still struggling with their health, and so feel very humbled.
I know your life has changed because you've talked about that before, but how has your work changed, and now both as an SID and a coach?
Well, I appreciate it more, and especially being here on campus. I appreciate it so much more, and you know, I walk into the doors of my office every day, and I tell God, thank you for giving me another day I can walk in the doors of my office. And you know, it feels still a little bit surreal for me to come back to work every day, and knowing that I can turn into the Mabee Center parking lot in my car rather than driving straight, going to Liberty Hospital every day, which is what I had to do all year last year. So certainly is really a neat thing to be back in the swing of things.
For people not familiar, can you give us kind of the nutshell version of how everything went down?
Sure. Well, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of leukemia in May of 2013. Went through 9 rounds of chemotherapy here in Liberty. Those finished up around the first week of December of 13. My wife and I then moved to Omaha, Nebraska in January for a bone marrow transplant. And the rule of thumb is when you go get a bone marrow transplant, you have to stay within 30 miles of the vicinity of the hospital where you have your transplant for 100 days. The doctors have to watch you very closely for those first 100 days, because those are the most critical days as your body gets used to a brand new immune system. And so we were there from January 11th till April 25th, got back home on Friday the 25th, and then I started back to work that Monday the 28th, and have been back to work since. And like I said, just a few bumps in the road, and but just doing great. And you know, getting to coach again is something that I couldn't have dreamed. The perfect, in all the perfect scenarios, I couldn't have dreamed it going this well, this soon after all I've been through last year.
How did you catch it, and what would you recommend to others to make sure they catch something like that?
For me, it was a couple of things. It was extreme fatigue was the major thing, and I was a runner before this, and I started seeing my mile times just decline rapidly, really rapidly. So sometime around the 1st of March of 2013, I started noticing something was different. And what was interesting is I had a blood test in December of 12, and everything was fine. All my levels were fine. And so the doctors have kind of pinpointed somewhere between March and May, when I was diagnosed, is when something had to have happened. And so we caught it pretty early. The other thing is I got a sore throat that felt like I was swallowing glass. And that all the doctors I went to said, there's nothing wrong with your throat. There's nothing there. And so then finally just went in and got it checked out in the ER, got my blood work done. Some people with these types of symptoms can experience bruising out of nowhere. Right. I didn't have any of that, but it was the extreme fatigue that kind of alerted me that something's not right. And then then it was ultimately the sore throat that wouldn't go away. Right. And then the low blood counts, when they did my blood work in the ER, that's when they signaled something's not right here and we need to get it further checked. And so
I know you've got 100 or more great stories about people you encountered because you had so many travels and things. Can you maybe pick one story that, or talk about a person that you had contact with and maybe you would never have met except for this?
There were two, actually. There were two ladies who had transplants the same time I did. Annie and Carolyn are their names. And Annie's from Carroll, Iowa, and Carolyn is from Prague, Nebraska. If you know.
I know where Prague is.
Do you really?
Oh, yeah.
Not a lot of people do. That's the joke that we have. Everybody thinks it's from the Czech Republic.
No.
But no.
Good fishing.
Yeah. Okay. But those two had transplants 4 days before me, and them and their families and Christy and I became very close because we were going through the same things. We were going, they had the same treatments, and we got to share a lot of stories. We met up almost weekly for dinner, or we had doctor's appointments on the same days, and so we got to see and develop almost a friendship for life kind of thing, and we still keep in touch with them quite often. And I'm very blessed to have gotten to know them and their families, and it's just interesting how everybody's body handles things so differently when you go through that kind of thing. And so seeing them healthy again and seeing them handling it well has really put a smile on my face, because knowing what we all three went through and how difficult it was for all three of us at different points, it's so awesome knowing how well they're handling things.
Now that you've been through it, and I assume from what you've said that you have been cleared fully, is that the way it goes? Let's talk about that first.
Sure. Right now, the doctors have told me I'm cancer-free, which is awesome. The other part that was really encouraging is that, and something that they wanted to see, was that I'm 100% my donor, which is what they wanted to see. And so they basically wiped my immune system completely clean, and now there's nothing of my old part left in me. It's all my donor, which is what they wanted. And then, am I cured? Not necessarily yet. I'm not out of the woods in that regard. I think from what they told me, in somewhere between 3 and 5 years is when they'll officially call me cured. So I still have to get checked every 2 weeks or so for blood work and making sure all my counts are good. I go back to Omaha once every 3 months for checkups. And so I'll head back there next week for my checkup in October, and then I'll have to go back for my year checkup back in January. And so, some of the doctors have even kind of been a little bit amazed at my recovery and how quickly have returned back to work and how quickly my energy has come back. And I think going into it, I was somewhat healthy already, and my age, I think, played a big part of that. Right. And quite honestly, I think my faith played a huge part of it.
I want you to talk about that, because that was a huge part of it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that kept me going throughout this whole journey of the past year was putting all my faith and all my trust in God, knowing that He was going to take care of me, because He told me from the beginning He was going to. And every little mountain that came up, I just laid it before God and said, "Here it is. I need your help getting over this mountain." And He did every time. Every mountain we faced, He helped me climb it, and that's something I'll never forget.
Paul, we talked about how your work has changed a little bit and how you've had to adjust, but your personal life, how have you adjusted after this experience?
Well, what's interesting is that it has changed a lot, because when you think about it, for about 4 months from January to April, and it was just me and my wife in Omaha, and there wasn't a lot to do.
Yeah.
And so we went from 0 miles per hour from January through almost all of April to when we got back here. We went to 150 miles an hour, carrying kids to different places and being around the kids all day, and being back to work again, and having to be in 2 different places in a span of 2 hours, that kind of thing. And so it was tiring a little bit at first, but now I wouldn't trade it for anything. Being as busy as we are, I wouldn't trade that. And I know my wife is finishing her last year of nursing school, and so it has been really extremely stressful and busy on her. But and at the same time, I look back on where I was a year ago, and wouldn't trade it for what I'm going through now. I'm happy that I'm busy, and I'm happy that I'm keeping on a structured schedule kind of thing, where I was not. I was pretty much sitting at home or sitting in a hospital bed a year ago. So
I know there have been a lot of nice things said about you, and you've been welcomed back, but none better, I thought, than the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, when the tennis team being inducted included you as an honorary member. Could you tell that story? I'm sure you'll tell it a lot better than I will.
Well, my junior and senior year, I had a medical condition where my doctors ruled me out from playing tennis again here at Jewel. And it kind of frustrated me a little bit. And come to find out that the condition, I found out a couple of years later, the condition actually never existed. And so
really?
It made that even more difficult. And so I got to play. I was fortunate enough to play tennis here my freshman and sophomore year. And my sophomore year, I was teammates with 4 of the guys that were inducted into the Hall of Fame. And then I was on the team a little bit of the start of my junior year, and that was the year I met Brian Carney, who was inducted in with the team this year. And Brian was real instrumental in contacting me and helping me start the research to present to the Hall of Fame committee about that team. And so once we dug into the research, we found what a real special team that team was my senior year that I didn't get to be a part of. And so it was an unbelievable experience getting to be involved with that team again. I had not seen some of those guys in 20-some years, and so and what was also really awesome is that a lot of those guys followed my story all last year, and so they know what a difficult journey that was for me. But for them to include me in that was very special, and that's a night I'll never forget.
Yeah, that was really neat.
Yeah.
You've been through all of this, and I'm sure people want to talk to you about it. Does it bother you to have people come up and ask you to tell your story, or are you grateful for the chance to do that?
I'm always grateful because it's a chance for me to relay hope. And what's great about, since I've been back, there have been 5 people very close to me that have been diagnosed with a form of cancer. One of them was even diagnosed with the same type of leukemia that I had, diagnosed the exact same day I was a year ago. And so it's a chance for me to sit down and let them know, hey, I've been there, and I know what you're going through, and I'll do whatever I can to help you through it. And and even people that don't have cancer that come up and want to talk to me, I still want to relay that whatever you face in life, whatever storm comes your way, there's hope. And I happen to go through a pretty tough storm, but I got through it, and here's how. And so it's given me a great chance to share my hope and share my story and share my faith with them,
right.
And so I don't mind sharing it at all, because as difficult as it was still the most life-changing experience I've had in my entire life.
All the health issues aside, your job here at Jewel is unique. Only one other SID in the conference has coaching duties that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that challenge like for you?
Well, a lot of late nights sometimes, but I love it. I still to this day think William Jewell should be put on trial for a crime for me getting paid to do what I do, because I love my job so much. I don't even consider it a job,
right.
I get to work with stats, I get to work with sports, I get to sit and watch games and stat games, and which is what I've done all my life,
right.
And
right.
so, and then to coach tennis along with that is so fulfilling for me, and you just can't. Words just cannot describe how it feels to be back doing those things again. It's busy, but it's a good busy. And thankfully, the fall season for tennis is somewhat slow, mm-hmm. and it's almost already over already. And so now I can kind of put all my energy and all my focus into the sports information role for a little while. But I have a great team of work study students and a great assistant in Brittany Colby.
Right.
Have outstanding workers that help me, and I'm so blessed. I probably have one of the best stat crews, I think, in the conference.
And when it comes to tennis, I know Lanny Wake, who was your high school coach,
mm-hmm.
kind of took over for you last year. How's the team, or teams in your case, changed in a year? When you came back, did you recognize differences in those groups?
I did. Well, what was the biggest difference was the turnover, especially on the men's side, because we graduated 5, and so we brought in 6 brand new players. And to be honest with you, I didn't know coming in. I thought, wow, this is going to be a big change because there's so many new players coming in. And how in the world are we going to mesh, and how are we going to
sure.
gather together? And thankfully, I have a great leadership team of Jimmy Hunter, Isaac Hamilton, and Dean Pincus, who brought all the team together from the very start of the season from the men's side, and said, we're going to have a good season, and we can't do this without everybody coming together and being a team. Right. And I'll be honest with you, Rick, in my 10 years of coaching, I've only been with this team for about a month and a half, but it is the closest knit team I've ever been involved with.
Isn't that interesting?
And it's just unbelievable how those 3 guys rallied around and said, we're going to have a good year, and we're going to make sure that we're a close family type group. And they've done such a good job of leading that team already, and I can't wait to see what happens with them in the spring. On the women's side, another great core of leaders with Connor and Larry Hazel-Rigg and Katie Lambauer kind of have done the same thing, and have kind of pulled the teams together, and they're running workouts, they're running voluntary practices, They're doing so many good things off the court that have really benefited our team already. And like I told you before, there were so many times last year in hospital beds where I would dream up, what's it going to be like this year when I come back coaching again? And I didn't even know I was going to even get to at that point. But I always had it in my mind, I was going to coach again this year. I always made that my goal. And in the perfect scenarios I could dream up, I could not have dreamt that this year would be the way it's been. It's almost been perfect. The way the teams that I have come back to have just been so great to work with. They work extremely hard. They're extremely focused. They're so goal driven, and I couldn't have asked for a better group to come back to coach.
Now that you're back working, coaching, tell me, and you're a Jewel graduate too, tell me what the response was from the Jewel community. And since you have a chance here, maybe you want to say something to the community as a whole, the Jewel community, that is.
I will tell you, I owe so much to William Jewell College. They were in my corner all year. And, from human resources to the president, to Dr. Bailey, to all of our coworkers here, to you for all you did for me for sports information last year. It was unbelievable to see the support I got. And then when I got back, one of the neatest things that happened to me when I got back is I had not seen the prior learnings commons yet.
Sure.
Because when I left, it was almost just a skeleton. Right. It had not been finished yet. And so when I got back here in May of 14, I was probably the last full-time employee to ever see the prior learnings commons. And so I got a personal tour from President Salih, and it was just neat seeing him and getting a tour of the building. And I mean, how many college presidents would take time out of their day to do that? And that made my day very special that day. I'll never forget that day. And receiving cards and emails and texts all year from members of the college community was so inspiring to me. And that's why I'm trying to pass that along to some of the friends and coworkers that have been diagnosed with cancer since I've been back. I've been trying to repay that forward from all the support that I received last year as well.